Hello, hello?
Hello?
Hello, is anyone out there?
It's a mom's night out.
Dr. Jacqueline Nesi is a clinical psychologist, assistant professor at Brown University, and author of the weekly newsletter Techno Sapien, which reaches over 50,000 readers each week. Her research focuses on the role of technology in kids' mental health and how parents can help. She is also the co-founder of Tech Without Stress, which provides online resources and courses for parents raising kids in the digital age. She's also a mom of 2, soon to be 3. Hi, Jackie. Welcome to A Mom's Night Out.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you tonight. I think this is a really important topic that so many people constantly are looking for, especially myself. I know I'm constantly wondering, what is everybody doing at their houses? Is what I'm doing normal? Is this the normal amount of time that my kids are spending with technology? Mm-hmm. So let's dive right in. So one of the things that I love about your Substack is that you're all about the data. And I think all 3 of us love unpacking the data. Recently, Common Sense Media put out a new report on media use in kids ages 0 to 8. Can you tell us a little bit more about that report?
Sure. Yeah. So Common Sense Media is a nonprofit that's focused on kids' media use. And they do a lot of amazing work. I definitely recommend that parents check it out as a resource. One of the great things they have actually is like reviews of TV shows, apps, games, YouTube channels, like anything you can think of. So if you're ever curious, like, is it a good idea for my kid to watch this? Common Sense Media is a good place to go. I use it a lot. But part of what they do is research. And so a couple months ago, they came out with this survey. And what they did was they surveyed parents of kids ages 8 and under in the US, about 1,500 parents. And it's a sample that's representative of the country, and asked them a whole bunch of questions about their how their kids use screens, what the parents think about kids' screen time. And I think the results are really interesting.
Well, on that note, I want to talk about the big stat from that. 2 hours and 20 minutes of screen time per day. So so I think that was the average, right? Yeah. Of what people are watching, allowing their kids for screen time. Can you walk us through how that breaks down across the different types of media?
Sure. Yeah. So the big headline is 2 hours and 27 minutes of screens per day. And this is for kids ages 8 and under. So there's actually a pretty big range across the ages.
Yeah.
For under 2, the average is about an hour of screens. From 2 to 4, it's about 2 hours. And then from 5 to 8, it's more like 3.5 hours.
Wow.
Does that count
in
an average time?
What do you say?
Like in school time, do they count like when they're on their Chromebook?
No, so this is like leisure screen time. Yeah, it doesn't count when they're in school.
That's insane. That feels like a lot. I'm not trying to be judgy.
Me neither.
But thinking about how we use screen time, I'm like, how do you have that many hours in a day to be?
I don't know that I'm with my kids that many hours.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah. And then, sorry to cut you off, but I was shocked at.
Yeah, no, it's a
3 hours
big number. And I think, that's an average. So that's, the things with these big data sets is, it's nice because it gives us a sense of just sort of on average, what are people in the country doing? But it does then sort of blend together all screens, all people, all circumstances. Like there's a lot of variability within that number. So, but that is the average.
So when you say screen time, this is probably old school me. I think they're just watching TV. Like what actually is included in screen time?
Yeah, so the definition varies a lot across different, like when people use the phrase screen time, both in the research and just generally, I think a lot of times they are referring to very different things, which is why actually I think sometimes this whole concept of screen time is not the most useful way to be thinking about it, because there's so many different things that can go within screen time, right? Like FaceTiming a relative could be screen time, which most of us would say like is great, and we want our kids doing. And then so could like playing a video game, which for some kids might be good, for others is not a good thing. So there's a lot that's captured in it. In this survey, it was basically any kind of screen media. So TV is the biggest one. That was, so the average in terms of how much TV kids are watching is an hour and a half a day. And then using like a device, like a smartphone or a tablet, playing video games. That was a smaller percentage of kids this age who are doing that. Phone use, that covers most of it.
Okay.
A few other things, obviously, in there, like, e-readers and those kinds of things, but
I feel like an e-reader. I'm like,
spending is small.
it's okay.
Yeah. I know.
Reading that
Maybe
book.
wouldn't count that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different.
I know. Okay, so that's the average, but is there like a recommended amount? Like, when you go to the pediatrician?
Yeah.
I feel like my pediatrician recently said something much, much lower than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is. So for the recommendations that, at least in the US, that usually like a pediatrician would be going by is the American Academy of Pediatrics.
Yeah.
And they recommend basically no screen time or very limited screen time for ages 18 months and younger, like a year and a half and younger.
Yeah.
From 18 months to 2. They sort of say you can start allowing a little bit as long as an adult is there and it's high quality. And then from 2 to 4, I think, or 2 to 5, the recommendation is, I think, an hour or less per day.
Yeah. I think that's what I remember too.
Yeah.
And then, an hour or less per day. And then from 5 to 8, they don't really specify a specific number. I think that's because, this, what we talked about with like screen time is so many things.
Yeah.
Sort of like, I think as kids get older, it starts to be more about like, what are they actually doing on the screens? How is it fitting into their lives and that kind of thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay. So a big question, so related to the 5 to 8 year old range, is I have an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
And she's always asking me about when am I going to get a phone? It's not necessarily like, can I get a phone? It's like, when can I get a phone? Because she tells me that like everybody has one.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I hope the second graders
Show her the
don't have
data.
phones.
She's telling me that they do.
Yeah. Well, so definitely some kids do. So about a quarter, 23%, according to the survey,
Gosh.
by 8 years old have their own
That is a
phone.
lot.
And
My jaw is on the floor. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think when this data came out, that was kind of the headline that a lot of people kind of clung to, because I think it was surprising to a lot of people. That can include smartphones or other kinds of phones. There's also tablets, like, which are more popular than phones for kids in this age range. So more kids have tablets, like almost 70% of 8-year-olds have their own tablet.
Well, and a lot of my daughter tells me that a lot of, and I've also had moms reach out to me, and no shade to these moms, because I'm sure some of them are listening, but they're like, hey, can your daughter message on her iPad? And I'm like, we don't have an iPad, so no. And absolutely not. We're not messaging on a tablet at 8 years old. But so I think you're right. Like, people are using tablets almost like adults. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point that it's really, I think families are really approaching this in very different ways. Like, I think there's a lot of variability in how people approach this. The other thing, like the stat around having their own tablet or having their own phone, like within that, we don't really know what exactly that means. Like, does that mean that they just have free reign over a phone or a tablet?
Yeah.
Or it's the kind of thing where, they have their own tablet, but they only use it like in a car trip or something like that, like
Right,
there's a lot of variability in terms of what that could look like. So although I think people were sort of alarmed by some of these statistics. I also feel like some of it is, because of the type of survey it is just sort of missing some of the context. So it's hard to really draw too strong of conclusions from it. But.
Good point.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I also like that you looked at non-screen media. So reading, music, podcasts. How do those numbers compare to screen use? And are we seeing these numbers go up or down since 2020?
Yeah. So let's see. So this is, from the same survey. They found that about half of kids are reading or being read to every day. 54%.
That's amazing.
That's for an average about a half hour, which is, I thought, pretty good. I think it'd be great if that number could get up a little.
100% would be great.
Totally.
Yeah. Because we know there's obviously there's a ton of benefits to reading. There's for younger kids, ton of benefits of being read to. And so, but that number is pretty consistent over the past few years. Kids are around 40% of kids are listening to music every day.
Wow.
Love that.
It's nice.
That's good.
Yeah. I'm like, that's my kids. We listen to music every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The podcast one was interesting. Obviously we're on a podcast right now, but I'm like, my kids don't listen to podcasts.
No, I didn't know there were kid podcasts.
Me
out
neither.
there.
Oh, I didn't either.
Yeah. There's some good kid podcasts out there. Yeah.
That's really nice to know.
Yeah, a lot of options.
You think about that, you could imagine, I listen to a ton of podcasts. So what if you wanted to teach your kid about something?
Or when you're in the car.
Yeah.
I love a podcast in the car. So imagine driving somewhere, finding a good kid relevant podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say in the car, we spend a lot of time, especially in the winter, driving, and we listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
I love
in
that.
the car, and a podcast would be so much easier.
Yeah.
You're not trying to follow the plot.
I'm like, wait, what is happening? And also,
All right. Hear that pro tip, moms. Podcast.
Yeah, there's also another option is audio players,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
$20 a Yodo player. I know my kids really like those, but I think.
All right. I want to get back to the survey because there's one other point in the survey about the gap between the lower and higher incomes.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so this shows up in a couple different surveys in this area, which is basically that kids in lower income houses have more screen time generally than kids in higher income households. So in this survey, it was almost double.
Wow.
I think that it's kind of a hard thing to parse apart because there's a lot of different factors that are probably contributing to that. But I think part of it is that it's just about access to resources and, with, childcare is expensive. Activities for kids are expensive. And when parents are busy and working and trying to do a lot of things, screen time is sometimes a good option for keeping them entertained, keeping them safe. And so I do think that, it takes resources to be able to actually keep your kids off of screens. And so I'm sure that's part of the story, though probably not the whole story.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. When I put my kids in front of the TV, it's when I need to get something done.
Same.
Or it's
a kid's home sick from school and you don't have childcare, or
I'm trying to finish a meeting in your home. It's just it's the easiest path. I know you'll sit there and you'll watch the show.
Yeah.
Or and even going outside, it's tough. Yes, I would love my kids to be outside, but sometimes I'm it's just easier to keep you contained in front of the TV.
I agree. Yeah, such a great point.
Yeah, I feel like that. Yeah, one of the things that I've taken away from the survey and more generally in doing this work is that I think parents generally need a little more support, around these things. I think that there's just, I think that it's really hard navigating screens, navigating technology, and and finding that balance. And so I do feel like parents, ideally we would have the support needed to, have emergency childcare or whatever it might be on the day that we need it, but that generally doesn't exist. And so I think there's a lot of, putting things on parents around like, you should be limiting it or you should be managing it in this way. But there's a lot of systemic factors that obviously are also kind of playing a role in this that I feel like would need to be addressed for this to really change.
Well, it's crazy too. Like our parents never had to deal with this conversations of, is your kid getting too much screen time or when do they want a cell phone? Like, it's just, it's funny.
They had TV and that was it.
Yeah. It was like, did you have cable or no cable?
Yeah.
That was the big thing. Like, could you watch Nickelodeon or not?
Yeah. Well, and now all the apps and everything, they're so addicting, right? Like YouTube TV, those shows, like those are designed to get your kids to like watch them and click on them.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think there's also this, they are, a lot of the technologies that kids are using right now are really not designed for kids, right? They're not designed to be, the safest or the healthiest or the best for kids' well-being. They're designed to keep them using them for as long as possible. And that's a really hard thing for parents to be sort of fighting against.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times when I talk to parents, there's a conversation around like, you don't want to make your kid feel like there is something wrong with them because they like screens or because they're having a hard time putting the screens down or like they are having trouble turning it off. Like, that is a function of the way these things are designed, not a flaw in your child, And of course, some kids, like it's easier for some kids than others. But I think that's sort of a good place to start when thinking about guiding our kids through this is like teaching them about how these technologies are designed in a way to make this challenging,
Well, I think about myself. I mean, I'm addicted to my phone. I find myself checking my phone, looking at my phone. And so to expect, and I think this always resonated with me, to expect that your child, like you just said, could manage that expectation is really not fair. And so I think we really have to take that on and realize like you can't get mad at your kids for getting addicted to this. We're addicted to this.
Right.
And you can't expect them to realize that and to see it.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so I think you talked about some of the reasons why all of us are using screens for our kids and like the realities of family. But one of the things that I think the data highlighted was that a lot of kids are using screens to fall asleep or calm down when upset. Mm-hmm. So what does the research say about using screens to help in those moments?
Yeah. So in this data, it was about a quarter of parents said that their kids are using screens to calm down when they're upset or like angry or having a tantrum or whatever it might be. About a third of kids were using screens to fall asleep at night.
That's insane.
Yeah. And those are two areas where I think the research is actually more clear than in other areas where generally, if we can, those are kind of situations to try to avoid using screens. Obviously things happen and things come up and like every situation is different. So there's taking them separately. When it comes to using screens to like calm a child down, we do want kids to have plenty of opportunities to figure out how to, kind of regulate their emotions without screens. I think that, and there's some data that just kids, when we're repeatedly turning to the screen as sort of the only coping strategy, that can backfire over time and sort of worsen kids' behavior over time.
I totally see that. Like the kids that when you're out at a restaurant and you can tell the parents who they are walking in, their kids, even walking in the door, have the iPad in front of them. Like it's not even like they give their kid a chance to sit down and function without an iPad. And this take it away, there's a meltdown. And you're like, you're at the table and you're watching, you're like,
Listen,
I get it.
When my kids watch TV and I turn the TV off, I see a difference in them, right? Like, so sometimes my kids will get up before me in the morning. Not recently, but there are times and they turn the TV on without my knowledge. And me coming down and turning that TV off, it's like they're different people than if
pulling the plug.
Than if they start their day without the screen time. So
Yeah, I think that's a really common thing that people notice is that, and no matter the age, it's really, from little kids through teens, like there are many kids where when screen time ends, it does have kind of an impact on their behavior, like a short-term impact on their behavior or their
Totally.
But I'm an adult. Like if you took my phone away for a couple hours, I would probably
have a meltdown.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. Not. It's like a little security blanket.
I know
for sure.
Anyway,
definitely. Yeah. And then the other like piece of this was about sleep and so like using screens to fall asleep generally is again, like of course there are some special circumstances, but generally is risky, I would say, because what happens is that kids can get in the habit, of course, of really needing a screen to fall asleep. Like they associate sleep with screens. So then if they're up in the middle of the night, as many kids are frequently, rather than being able to kind of put themselves back to sleep on their own, it then becomes an issue because they're sort of requiring a screen to fall back asleep.
Wow.
And so generally, that's just like a general piece of like sleep hygiene, screen hygiene, of like trying to.
Well, it's crazy because these are, 8-year-olds trying to then probably teach themselves because their parents don't have. I mean, I can tell you that AAP, probably American Academy of Pediatrics, probably doesn't recommend screen time at bed. We know they do not. But there seems to be a gap in the AAP recommendations and what is actually happening out here in real life. Do you think that the guidance should be revisited, or do we think we need more support for parents and how to guide them back to what the AAP recommends?
Yeah, I think it's, it's probably some combination of the two, of course. Like, I think that, so any guidelines that are going to come from, from any body like the American Academy of Pediatrics, are sort of the best that we have come up with to date, but that doesn't mean that they are foolproof. And, so we talked about the recommendations, like an hour or less of screen time for ages 2 to 5 on weekdays in particular. And there isn't, there isn't data that would suggest like 1 hour is the cutoff, right? Like there's nothing magical about, 1 hour versus 45 minutes versus an hour and 15 minutes, right? It's just at some point, like people find it helpful to have a specific number to sort of tie to, but that doesn't mean that it's the right thing for every family, or even that it's really based in the sort of solid research. That said, like what I think is based in research is that, of course, kids need plenty of time to be doing things outside of screens, right? Like they need to be interacting in person. They need to be getting active, playing, reading, like quality time with family, all these things. And so if screens are crowding that out, which in some cases they certainly could be if it's many hours a day, then obviously that is going to be a time when there needs to be a change. With the recommendations, I think that generally, I think parents need more support. I just think it's clear that like what's being recommended is not being followed. And I don't think that's because parents aren't trying or don't want to. I think it's because they feel like they can't. And there are really a lot of barriers in the way. So
yeah, it's almost like the recommendation should just be 0.
Yeah. Everyone should strive for 0.
Yeah.
Strive for
like, what it is for older kids, like from 5 up, is really more around like make sure they have plenty of time to do all the other things that are important in their lives. Make sure you're choosing quality content, make sure like, there's different aspects of like the context of screens rather than like a specific number cutoff.
Yeah. I would love if somebody told me it's 0 for a 40-year-old white female.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
it's 0.
I watch TV some nights.
I'm like, it's 0 for me.
Okay. What would you say to the parent out there that, is beating themselves up about listening, right? They're listening to this podcast. They're listening to what we're saying, and they're beating themselves up about how much screen time they're allowing their child to have each week. Like, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah. So I think that this is I think common. I do think that there is this sort of odd thing that's happened with the conversation around screen time where it's really become almost like there's a lot of judgment. I think there's a lot of like Yeah, I just think, it's become almost like a moral issue, the way that people look at it, and parents who make different choices feel very judged, and in some cases feel a lot of guilt. There's now like a whole research on parent screen time guilt and this feeling that parents have that, any screen time they allow is bad, and anytime their kids are watching screens, that's a bad thing. I feel like that is not warranted by the data, like from what we actually know about screens. And I think that there's two ways, I think, to approach this if you're a parent who's feeling guilty or feeling bad about screen time. So the first thing is like actually taking a look at your kid's screen time and like, is it in line with what you want, right? Like if not, then start problem solving, start thinking about ways to make a change. In many cases, though, that's not what's happening. In many cases, it's the parent, like themselves, are like this on some level. They're like, this is probably okay. Like, I'm not seeing any issues in my kid. They're getting plenty of time to do all the other things that are important. This is working for us. But they still have that like nagging feeling of guilt or uncertainty or whatever it might be because of all the things they're hearing about how bad screen time is. And in that case, I think it's about recognizing that and realizing that maybe this isn't something you need to feel. Like maybe it's not really based in the reality of what we know about screens.
I love that. Thank God for data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank God. I know.
In your article or your newsletter that was on this topic, you shared a really sweet story about your son asking for X-rays of shoes and refrigerators.
Yeah.
And it was very cheeky and cute. Do you think that there's a certain level of curiosity that's driven with screen use that maybe changes the way we should think about media exposure, really getting our kids exposed to more that we maybe wouldn't otherwise be sharing with them?
Yeah. So I have an almost 4-year-old who, was in a phase of like, I'm not sure how it even started, but he like really wanted to look at pictures of X-rays. That's
awesome.
He would just like pick random things around the room and be like, can we look at an X-ray of that? I think it's because my husband hurt his ankle around the time and had to get an X-ray. And so then he was very focused on X-rays. But yeah, I do think obviously there are so many valuable aspects of screen use, and part of that is learning, education, exploring interests. I know just in my own life, I definitely see with my kids, like if there's something they're curious about, we'll look up a YouTube video on it, or we'll look up pictures of it, or if it'll help us sort of explain something to see what it looks like or see how it works. And so I do think, and with, obviously with AI, generative AI becoming more and more mainstream, I think this is going to be even more the case, where it's sort of like a tool for exploring curiosity. And I think that can be a really good thing.
I think that's important too. Like I would have never in my mind, like equated my kids asking to see sort of a question of curiosity to screen time, but essentially it is. Yeah. And it's kind of overwhelming. So for somebody who's listening to this and is like, okay, there's no one size fits all approach. Maybe they're feeling overwhelmed. What's one thing you want them to hear from the conversation about their own screen time use with their family?
That's a great question. I guess the first thing I would say is what we talked about in terms of like guilt, and in some cases that guilt might not be justified. So there are many parents out there who I think should let themselves off the hook. And then, I guess the other thing, which we've also touched on, is just thinking about like sort of taking a step back from screens themselves. And like when we approach this question about screen time, and really thinking about like the context around screens, like what are the things that we value? What are the things that are important to us when it comes to our kids? What do we want to make sure they have time to do? What do we want to be doing as a family? Like all these things that I think are bigger than screens. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we can kind of back into, okay, like how do screens fit in or not fit in to that? So like, if we value our kids like being curious and learning and exploring their interests, then screens are going to be a great way to facilitate that. If we really value like screen-free family time, being outside, going for hikes, screens are not going to fit into that. And so I think some of it is really based on your values and what you want to prioritize as a family.
Before we get to the final wrap-up question on the topic, this is a personal question. What does screen time look like in your household?
Ooh.
Yeah, great question.
If you're willing to share.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course.
She's like, I have a whole Substack on girl.
Right, I know. Yeah, write about it all the time. Yeah. No secrets. No, yeah. I mean, so my kids are right now, I have an almost 4-year-old and a 21-month-old. So they're still young. And so I think that, the way that we use screens, I know, is going to change a lot over time. But right now, we basically always watch a show like together with the kids before they go to bed, which would not fit in with the AAP guidelines, but for us,
you're a rule breaker.
We always watch a show before they go down.
Oh, that's cute, though.
And we love it. It's like a great way to sort of wind down at the end of the day and have a little bonding on the couch. And then, we'll occasionally do a show or something at another time of day. If there's, if we feel like we need it or it would be useful. We definitely use screens for situations like long car rides, the doctor's office, things like that. And then, like I said, we'll, occasionally do, if there's something that, my kids are curious about or want to learn about or something like that, we'll, throw on a YouTube video or that kind of thing. But yeah, it'll change, I'm sure. And it has changed already a lot. So.
No, but I love your honesty. And I think it's important for our listeners to hear, you're someone who's so passionate about this topic and you're still using screens and using them in a way that works for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think no screen time is the goal personally. That's at least for me.
Yeah. It's some of my fondest memories. I was thinking about this when we were preparing for the episode. We're watching, and I know it's different, it's not a tablet, but we're movies that we grew up watching, right? Those are fond memories, having movie nights on Friday nights with our family.
We joked about Nickelodeon, but remember the Nickelodeon on Friday nights with they would spin the wheel with stick the stickly. Brought me back to that of sitting in front of the TV, and it was such a treat.
I know. Yeah. And I do think that, movies make you feel and there's things. And then there's the other side of it. And I was thinking about this. We recently traveled with my family, and I would always be like, okay, we're traveling. We have to get the iPads. We have to charge them. We have to have them ready. Yeah. And I sort of was like, I'm not doing that this time. And we went no iPads on a 5-hour plane ride.
Oh, good for you.
And you guys, we did it. And we were in the airport. We played Uno with my kids, right? And I have 3 kids. My kids were coloring. They did watch a movie on the airplane movie. Mm-hmm. So there was screen time. But I challenge everyone, you can do it.
You got to pack that restaurant bag.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of tricks in that bag.
No, I bet
you have a go bag.
Jackie, I bet you have a really, really good restaurant bag or travel bag.
I do not. I wish I had a better one. But
all right, we're gonna send you all our pro tips because I feel like we have combined. We have a good one.
Yeah.
It's been years in the making.
Yeah, I mean, we have 8-year-olds, so it's taken us 8 years, and
finally
now we've got it.
Yeah,
I bet you our 8-year-olds could come up with a list.
I know. We should link that when we air this episode. Link back to our favorite non-screen time.
We have a whole travel thing on. Anyway.
All right, should we ask you some fun questions?
Sure.
Okay. What is your ideal mom's night out?
Oh, man. Let's see. Well, I live near the beach and I love the beach. So it would probably involve the beach in some way, maybe going and having dinner, just ordering a pizza on the beach and having a drink and and hanging out.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Send us the invite.
yeah, definitely. You guys are all invited. So it's been a while, I think, since I had a mom's night out. So
I
feel that.
I do. Okay, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Yeah, definitely teleporting, I would say. Like being able to just
Fine.
Is that yours? Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like I've spent enough time.
I knew I connected with you.
Yeah, it's a good one. I feel like I spent enough time on like long car rides, and plane trips and stuff. That I'm like,
and I would love my teleportation if I could just touch somebody and they could come with me.
Yeah. Okay. That's important.
Apparently, I think about this a lot.
Oh my gosh, I'm dead. All right. And final question. What's one thing that nobody knows about you?
Oh gosh. Yeah, this is tough because as we said, I have a Substack that I write every week. Where I share a lot of things about myself. Let's go with, this is one that actually a lot of people know, but I grew up as one of 6 kids. I'm 6 kids in my family, which is kind of a fun fact.
Where are you in the order?
I'm second.
Wow.
I've got, 2 brothers, 3 sisters.
Wow. Oh my God. That's amazing. Big families are fun.
Huge family.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Jackie, can you tell all of our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. So, so a few places the main place you can find me is on my Substack newsletter. It's called Techno Sapiens. So it's just technosapiens.substack.com. And I write weekly about parenting, psychology, technology. I'm on Instagram, so you can also find me there. At Jacqueline Nesi. And you can also find me at Tech Without Stress, which is a series of online courses for parents about managing technology for their kids, which I started with my friend and colleague, Emily Weinstein. And so that's, techwithoutstress.com.
I love that.
I know. Everyone needs to go check it out. Substack, I am a subscriber and I think it's hilarious. And also, so I'm learning so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
This was such a good episode too. It wasn't like trying to like point and be like, don't have screen time.
I know.
It's like, let's have this holistic conversation about where it fits into people's lives. And I think that's so important.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.